It is live stream now. Fatima, you may.
Hello, everyone. Okay. Thank you so much, Nadine. Thank you, everyone, for joining our discussion today. Today's webinar, we will discuss about the situation of death in custody in Asia. It's an extremely sensitive and important area, and central to our discussions on anti-torture and how we can end impunity for torture and in custody, but also other forms of cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment. So I'm joined by expert panelists for this discussion. I will briefly introduce my colleagues, and then I will introduce to you briefly the Asia Alliance Against Torture, which is hosting this discussion. So we are joined here today with Mr. Om Prakash, who is with Advocacy Forum. And he has extensive experience, Advocacy Forum has extensive experience on working on these cases, on litigating on these cases and providing support. He is the Executive Director of Advocacy Forum Nepal, and we're very pleased to have him with us. Then we are joined with Mr. Kirti Roy from Masoom, India. He's the Secretary of Masoom. And similarly, he's also an expert in this area, and Masoom has extensive work in both documenting torture and other custodial, violent situations, and also being a leading voice on advocating against this form of impunity. This webinar is hosted by the Asia Alliance Against Torture, and I'm the moderator for this discussion. My name is Fatma Bukhari. I'm a lawyer and affiliated with Misavi, Pakistan, and also a member of the Asia Alliance Against Torture. The Asia Alliance Against Torture is a regional initiative of across 9 countries in Asia, comprising 11 organizations that are working against impunity for torture and other human rights violations. And we have come together really to see how best we can join hands in our efforts in, ending authoritarianism, rise of violence, other human rights abuses in the region, and also focusing on marginalized segments of society and communities that are very vulnerable. So today we will be talking about death in custody, which is of course one of the most serious forms of situations that can arise as a result of torture. And so I'm really just going to start by asking our panelists here to please give us an overview of the situation in your respective jurisdictions of the prevalence of instances of death in custody, what the situation on the ground has been, what are some of the factors that have aggravated it, for example, in the COVID-19 context, if any, and similarly, what is the legal framework right now in place in both Nepal to address or to prevent, but then later to hold accountable those people that are involved in such cases. And similarly, what is the situation and the legal framework in India? So I will start with Om. If you could please take the floor and give us your insights.
Thank you very much, Fatima and colleagues. I'm Om from Advocacy Forum Nepal. So in Nepal, death in custody and torture is practiced as in other countries. So we have been monitoring torture detention in all provinces of Nepal, and we have been meeting to the detainees, and we have been interviewing to them. So our data shows that still around 20% of detainees are tortured by police in custody, and ill treatment is still more than that. So torture is it's a kind of systematic practice in some police stations, because even the in charge of the police stations are involved in some cases, and sometimes they are instructing to inflict torture. So still, it is there, though we have laws to that criminalize torture, but still it is practiced. So that torture is leading to custodial deaths in several cases. Like we have detention centers in all 77 districts of Nepal, and we have child correction homes in 8 places, and we have prisons in 74 places. Still, it is not properly managed. So also that physical torture and mental torture is one thing, but the management of these correction homes is another thing. So they are living like in hell, because they don't have spaces there, and they are overcrowded, and they don't have quality food. They don't have water supplies, and they don't have enough clothes, and it's like hell. Even the children who are overcrowded in small rooms, they have to share beds, and they have to sleep turn by turn. So that is the situation. So that means that not only the physical but mental and other forms of torture is there in detention centers. And we have found that out of 1,005 detainees we interviewed in 2019, so we find that around 20% are torture, and among them, like the females, we segregated and we analyzed the data, and we found that around 26% of female complained of torture, and like the juvenile is around 25% of juveniles complain torture. So different forms of torture are practiced, and it's mental and physical tortures are practiced, and just we have documented 39 cases of custodial deaths. That means torture is around 20%. Overall torture is around 20%, and custodial deaths that we documented from 2018 when the torture was criminalized, and to 2022, 39 cases of custodial deaths that we documented. That means that this form of torture is severe, so that such kind of incidents are happening. That means 39% persons died in custody, and some of them were suspected torture to death. So our record shows that in police custody, 16% were 16% died in custody, and in most of the cases, police claim that these cases happened because of suicide, and most of the cases were found hanging in the toilet and cutting throats. Such kind of cases were there. So always in such cases, police claim that these happened because of suicide, but no one investigates what were the reasons of suicide. And in most of the cases, the police do not entertain first information reports and do not investigate those cases. That means it's very difficult for the victims to get justice or to get reparations or compensations in these cases, because the investigation is not done by the police for a long time. So like that, in prison, we have documented 21 cases of deaths in prison, and there are records that in 16 months time span, 18 persons died in prison, and no investigations were conducted in all these cases. the authority claimed that they have died natural death, and even the postmortems were not conducted. Just their family members were contacted and handed over the dead body, and they were made to sign on the paper that the person died natural death. So it shows that many cases of torture and custody deaths are happening in custody and in prisons, but no investigations are conducted, and impunity for those who involved in the torture are guaranteed. So in Nepal's context, like we have a penal code, and under the penal code, we need to file a false information report in the same police station against the police officers. That is why these false information reports are not entertained by the police, and investigations are not conducted. So the justice for the victims are blocked by the police itself. So that is the situation in Nepal currently. So we can discuss about it later on in the next session. Thank you.
Thank you, Om. This is very concerning indeed. The statistics that has been collected and documented by Advocacy Forum through their documentation and monitoring. And I imagine that the actual situation is even more severe, because there are always these gaps in complete access to what is happening in prisons and detention centers with regards to mysterious deaths that occur. But I think I will try to pick up on some of these barriers in investigation and barriers in accountability framework for families, and or other actors that want to really try to understand that why these deaths are happening, and what's the process. But I think let's move on now to Kirti to also just give us a perspective on what's happening in India. And then I think together I will ask you both again to go more deeper into the legal framework. Over to you, Kirti. Please tell us what is the situation in India right now, and what is Masoom's documentation and monitoring on?
Thank you, Fatima. Before going to the subject, I want to, in our view regarding custodial death, first you must aware that India government, the largest democracy in the world, did not ratify till date CAT. So we are unable. So we don't have any torture law, no domestic mechanism. So by this way, we are the human rights activists have to work, have to make the civil society aware. Second point, generally, custodial death means custodial death happened to under trial prisoners. When police arresting someone and after 24 hours sending to court, the man is supposed to be one under trial prisoner. If he died in the custody, so under trial prisoner died allegedly due to torture by the police, it is only the police who are perpetrators. In my opinion, there must be some judicial accountability. Under judiciary, they are being arrested. So judiciary should take up. Unfortunately, till date in India or South Asia, even Asian countries, judiciary are not taking proper step after getting information that one person died in the custody. Again, I am saying in judicial custody. Number two, I want to say one point. Who is declaring one person death? Death in judicial custody, in our Indian phenomenon, we are seeing that one person has been died, and that already the manipulation theory manufactured, and later on it was shown that the person taken to hospital and the doctors, yes, dead. There are several instances the person was arrested and then tortured to death and the body disappeared. So there is no record of arrest. So you cannot say that the person was died in police custody. Number three, in many cases in India, we are observing that the doctors in government hospitals, they are in nexus with the police and they are giving false certificate. So it is, I want to narrate in very short point that custodial death, when the topics is this, custody, not only police custody, not only police the perpetrator, to me, all the stakeholders in criminal justice system, they all are connived with and they all are partners, nexus, and even the holy cow judiciary. It is my first, yeah. Second point, in India, in many subdivision, taluk level, not district headquarter, the autopsy upon the dead body is being conducted by the domes, the Dalits. It is not the doctor. I hope, as I now saying, the faces of Fatima, Om, I know in Bangladesh also, it is everywhere, it is going on. The doctor's autopsy surgeon is sitting somewhere else and domes are cutting and all these things are going on. And you may be a case of custodial death due to torture. And if you give a bottle of wine to the dome, unlettered, scheduled caste, untouchable, who is cutting this dead body, you can get one certificate that person died to anything, heart attack or anything. So it is the general situation. I want to say another thing, that in India, we have more than 20,000 police stations. And I believe, strongly believe, that each police station, each day, at least one or two persons are being tortured, facing degrading treatment, everything it is going on in every police station in India. We have 1347 prisons, and it is reported by the government in the parliament from 1960 onwards that all prisons are overcrowded, as Om said. we are hearing one term. I hope moderator and can understand that in every jail there is one kahabat hai ki it is kachi. Oh, there are no space to sleep. वो कांची का अपेक्ष होएगा. कांची means scissor. So one man should lie down and sleep and pillow like one body. So two body are sleeping, two men are sleeping in one bed. So a Kachi system is still there. There are so many cases of deaths in prison. And it is not only prison, there are homes, custodial homes, mainly for aged person, women, etc., trafficking cases. Those homes, it is not only as Om said, there are so many cases that from homes, women are being again trafficked to brothel. Directly, there are so many news in the news article. So what is the purpose of these? Is the system, the judiciary? I don't know. Another thing, custodial death due to torture, I want to say that in this area, subcontinent, that I feel that in our society, Hindu, Muslim, whatever it may be, the torture exists in the society. So cultural, religious, those people, those who believe that, yes, torture is needed, he is culprit, we have to teach them lesson now and then. So police, when beating someone and focusing that the person is a thief, generally society supports. One person has been arrested. There are instances that people surrounding court and demanding we want capital punishment. So this is the situation. I want to say the very society. Another thing I want to say that our Indian, I know in Pakistan, Bangladesh also, that the IPC, that means Penal Code, Indian Penal Code, Criminal Procedure Code, Evidence Act, all are written by the Britishers, imperialists, to suppress our people. And that is being followed even after 75 years of independence. So I don't know what to do. The lower court, lower judiciary, magistrate courts, they are, to me, is not independent. They are dependent upon police and administration in each and every step, even in their personal life also. And the higher court, writ court, high court, Supreme Court, they can pass good orders which are available in law book that are not being followed in India. For example, I want to say in 1980, Supreme Court, Indian Supreme Court passed that after arrest, nobody can be handcuffed or roped. Still it is going on all over India. And Supreme Court don't think. You, Fatima, you are lawyer. I hope you know D.K. Basu judgment of Calcutta of Supreme Court of India. That procedure of arrest, what to do, what not to do. Still, it is not being followed in our land. Though Indian Constitution, Article 141, it says the order passed by the Supreme Court is the law of the land. But nobody cares. Even Supreme Court does not care. So, our NHRC, National Human Rights Commission, another thing. In India, we have about 180 human rights commissions. All are being paid from our own pocket, taxes. And they are not accountable. They are dumped with millions of complaints. They don't want to see. They are only asking the report from the perpetrators. And when this report comes, they are satisfied, close the case. So regarding justice, getting justice, it is no, void. Only impunity is there. Systematic impunity. I think, in short, I can stop here. You have another, if you have any questions, I am ready to answer.
Thank you so much, Kirti. I mean, the situation is really, really serious, and there's a complex set of variables that are also contributing to, one, the original situation of impunity and violence, but then also the challenges of implementation of any good practices or any good legal, instruments that have come out in our jurisdictions. And I think some of these challenges that Kirti has highlighted extremely crucial for and also resonate with the rest of the region. Like, we do know that Pakistan, for example, does not have a torture legislation domestic. We have, of course, ratified CAT, but much late, only in 2010. And of course, being a country where international instruments are not automatically part of our legal system, which is pretty much the case for most of Asia, that you have to have a domestic legislation for courts to be able to give effect to the rights contained in international instruments. So this is a huge vacuum, and in India, that is also a huge situation that is similar. And of course, even countries that do have torture legislation, for example, in the Philippines or Sri Lanka, or even in Nepal's case, although that is definitely a positive step, but we do see that there are still key gaps in implementation of these laws, and there are key gaps in people's access to these laws. So I think, just to recap, a little bit between the similarities, I think, of what Om was saying and what Kirti was saying. And I also, completely want to focus on what Kirti said, that there are some unique cultural challenges that are also important. So, for example, both Om and Kirti mentioned that how documentation of a death in custody case is extremely challenging because there are gaps in the medical legal documentation. There's also gaps in the autonomy of the doctors that are doing these investigations, or that are preparing the documentation or making the assessment. But this unique situation, which Kirti has mentioned before as well, and has raised it several times, of the untouchables, so to speak, that are responsible for autopsy. That's a huge sort of a situation. I mean, with regards to being able to effectively medically document if death in custody is a result of violence, or if it's a case because of some other reason. So I mean, this is a unique issue to India, and I'm sure maybe Om, you have some comments on this as well, perhaps from your region, but this is definitely something I think that has to be addressed. And so, Kirti, I will have a follow-up question on this with regards to what is the local practice, because if this is happening, but there's no legal authority for that, then what, if anything, has happened to raise this issue or to bring it under some legal cover? if there is this sense that this is how it will be done. But I want to take this conversation now, and I think both of you have touched upon it, but I really want to ask out in more detail. What is, we know what all is not there, but what is there in the legal framework, both in Nepal and both in India, that, for example, if a death in custody case happens, including in the context of police, but also in the context that, Kirti rightly mentioned, there are other contexts in which, and especially this situation of where there is no record of arrest at all, everything is happening extrajudicially, which we also know from, in familiar terms such as judicial encounters, where it's not just violence that sometimes leads to the death, it's also sometimes, what is known as deaths that occur through the police, and which is also a concern. So what do we have? What is it that you do in Nepal, and what is it that you can do in India when you see a situation of, death in custody in the context of the police, where the police has been given the order to keep someone in custody by the judicial, magistrate or the judiciary in your context? And what do you do when there is no arrest record? And there are several of those cases as well. What is the legal framework in place that, can assist complaints? And what are the gaps in those legal systems, apart from, some of the ones that you've already highlighted? So we can start with Om again on this, and then followed by Kirti.
Thank you very much. In Nepal, after if we document, we find, or we get some information that torture or death in custody is happening through different means. Maybe sometimes we get information from the prisoners themselves, sometimes from the media also. Then still it's very difficult to access those places, because human rights defenders or lawyers are not allowed to enter in the prison, especially, and only the National Human Rights Commission and the Attorney General's office, they have that access, and it's really difficult to get access and information. So somehow we get in touch with the victims' family members, and then we provide support through legal means. But it's very challenging because we need to, according to National Penal Code, we need to file first information report in the police stations, nearby police stations. That means mostly the same police station when this thing happened. And if that police station, it's obvious that because of the conflict of interest, they do not entertain such first information reports. So in that case, just we need to go to district attorney's office, and we submit both copies, one copy of application and one copy of the FIR that tried to file at the police station, and then request the public prosecutors to write a letter to the police to register the first information report and initiate the investigations. So in our experience, in some cases, they do not want to write a letter to the police. As Kirti said, that sometimes they have a kind of nexus, maybe, or some kind of fear, because fear of the security forces, or maybe, or there could be any other reason. In some cases, they have written a letter to the police to register the FIR and investigate the case. But what happens that investigation, that the registration is done, but an investigation is not conducted. In several cases, in most of the cases, and and mostly the in charge or the designated investigator is inspector level or sub-inspector level, police officer. And in some cases there are allegations against their seniors. So it's very difficult even for them also. It's very challenging for them also to investigate case against a criminal case against their seniors. So mostly these cases are pending, sorry, for a long time. When the family members approach them, then the response is the investigation is going on, and you will be informed. Sorry. So sometimes the investigation committee is formed, but mostly by the police officers themselves. So there is also conflict of interest because the case is against the police officers, and the investigation team is formed by the police itself. And sometimes by the Home Ministry also. Committee is formed, but such kind of committee's report is never made public or never given to the victim's family members. What was the finding of the committees? That report is never shared. Sorry. So that means it's challenging for the victims' family members to get justice, to access justice. And like it said, there are problems in the postmortem report also, because there are lack of trained manpower, and forensic experts are very less in Nepal. So these are challenging. And if the cases could not be established, if the evidences could not be established, then the case cannot be proceed ahead. And in some cases, like there are a lot of evidences and visible marks of torture on the body, and postmortem is also conducted, but at last the police do not investigate, and at last they decide not to go for legal proceedings. So they kept it in hold. So that kind of situation is there. Like even evidence are there, but some kind of, like it is said, that nexus or something, then they decide. They have that power, they decide, or that district attorney, forwards the report to the provincial, or to higher authority, about their decision not to go forward on the case. Then it's like kept in hold. So it's really difficult because of this, legal problems, legal challenges, because we don't have separate investigative mechanism. Then the no thorough and independent investigation is done. So there are very less chance to get justice, to get truth and justice by the victim's family members in custodial death cases. Yeah. Thank you. We can discuss later on more if there are questions by the participants. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Om, for pointing out these challenges. I think that you have pointed out a number of key areas that are essential if effective investigation is meant to be done. But so there's two gaps. There is also, one is the absence of an effective mechanism, or that there are some challenges in the present mechanism which forces complainants to complain to the police against their superiors or against their colleagues and partners, which raises that issue of would they take that seriously? Would they have sufficient independence and autonomy to be able to, file an FIR against their batchmate or against their superior officer? And then thereafter, whether or not there will be enough, evidence through the processes that are in place, medical, legal, and other, that can be independently collected, that would be able to support the case of a particular complainant. So there is the mechanism, but then there's also the incentive for investigation, the initiative on the part of the state is also missing somewhere in the mechanisms. And then the second part is that there are key processes which need to be looked at more critically to see what is preventing lack of access right now and what is furthering impunity. And I think several of these have been touched by Kirti as well in his conversation as well. But Kirti, I just want to know your experience, because I know that, Masoom, despite these legal challenges, Masoom and many other defenders routinely go to whichever mechanism is available, to raise voice against these cases. You try to use whatever the law that you have. So I really want, you to give your insights on where it is that, you go to access some form of remedy, even if there are gaps in that, and then what avenues there are, and you've highlighted already that there's the National Commission of Human Rights Institutes, but they have their own challenges, that the process does not sufficiently cater, and then lower judiciary and higher judiciary has these issues. But still, what do we do? What can you do as a citizen, as a litigant, as a family when a death in custody case happens right now?
Okay. My first point is that in our country, India, in our statistics, those who are being tortured in custody, they are either Dalits or tribals, and mostly they are Muslims, religious minorities. And I again hope, and we have documents also, that everywhere they are being tortured in each and every country. George Floyd can be tortured because he is black in America also. So my point is, those people who are marginalized in the society, they are being tortured in police or in prison or suffered in the judiciary also. These people, those who are have-nots. Number two, I want to say what Fatima asked, that we have, though we did not sign, our government did not sign CAT or Rome Statute, still we have enough acts, provisions in our constitutions. In Indian Penal Code, there are sections 330 and 331. And these are not being implemented. It is overlooked because investigation is poor. So you cannot prove that person was tortured in custody. In our Nhrc, in 1995, the first chairperson of Nhrc, Ranganath Mishra, when he was chairperson of Nhrc, he circulated one doctrine that In custodial death case, every police, every hospital, they have to do this, they have to follow this order. No. In 1995, Nhrc circulated one model postmortem report how to examine the dead body. It should be done by the at the morgue, at the autopsy. The form is not available in anywhere. It is in the book in the Nhrc, but that is not circulated, or government did not print and health department did not follow. Such situation is there. Regarding arrest, 1997 DK Basu judgment, it is everywhere in the law colleges, everywhere in the world. But that is not being followed. No memo of arrest, no inspection memo, nothing. So you can do this anywhere. In 1993, so our Supreme Court passed that in Nilavati Behera case, that a person died in police custody due to torture by the police, the family should get compensated. We don't have. Earlier, I told that there are so many Human Rights Commission 180, but they are not following this order. So, situation in short, it is that our the people who are being died in the custody, they cannot claim before the authority that we want justice. Another thing, we in our law, we don't have victim protection, witness protection law, anything. So when they are demanding something against the police, they are being threatened, they are being killed. We have several instances that after Gujarat riot, so many witnesses are being killed by the police. So the victim's protection is not there. And another thing, the international human rights body like A3T, if they are doing some webinar, it is good. But to support the victim for getting justice, to knock the UN windows, it is also the duty. So not only some statement or something, but regarding when you are dealing with today's discussion, custodial death, that means custodial torture, it is rampant in India. So we need that A3T and other human rights bodies like OMCT, like Amnesty, like any other Human Rights Watch, they should work more to the field, not only some paperwork. We have seen paperwork. I am in this field for last more than 50 years. So I have seen everything. So we need some practical thing that we need catch hold of the victim. And last point I want to say that how, as moderator asked, how we can prove. Yes, we can prove. Even there is no police investigation, we can prove. We developed our own fact-finding format, and there is separate issues, topics, including death in custody. And we are following this. We are asking those co-inmates in the prison or police custody, we are taking their statements. Even if police denied that the person has been arrested, but there are one tea shop in front of police station, police is getting some tea or food or snacks, particularly on particular day, they asked for 14 people. And police is saying that 13 people were arrested in the police lockup. So we can challenge that by public exchequer, you have paid snacks for 14 people on that day. Now you have 13 people. There are so many other things also. The time of arrest, if we get some eyewitness statement, the person was arrested from that point and taken by this car, and that car number is similar to police station. So many things can be proved, circumstantial evidences. So we can prove by here from there, and we are conducting this type of fact finding. So we are challenging these reports, and for this, yes, you have truly said, all of in Masum, in field or in office, we are facing several false criminal charges, though we are not against police. We are opposing particular act by particular man on a particular day, not alleging total police. We want police system, but still the government is doing thing. Om was saying that prosecution. In India, I think in Omi area and in Pakistan, Bangladesh, everywhere, prosecutors are being a political appointment. When one regime goes, new prosecutors are being appointed. And their only one duty is to support the government and the police action. Nothing else. They are not prosecutors. They are only mouthpiece of the government. So it is where we have to fight for human rights, for justice to the victims, and we have to fight, and civil society. For your information, tomorrow is 25th June. In India, 1975, Indira Gandhi proclaimed emergency, death of democracy in 1975. So we are observing 25th June tomorrow, and 26th June is Anti-Torture Day or Victims Day. And on that day, we are going to release the report. Tomorrow will be the public hearing or People's Tribunal or social audit from Indo-Bangladesh border, who are being killed, tortured, raped, everything. They are coming by hundreds. They will depose. 3 benches we have formed. One for Article 21, one for Article 19, and one for Goal 16, SDG, Justice. And we have formed this court. Tomorrow from morning to evening, it will go on. And next day in Calcutta Press Club, we will submit the report. Our point here is that by this way, we are trying to push our civil society that these things are happening. It is only our duty, because I think human rights activity is to create some pressure upon the government, upon the civil society. And we are trying to perform our duty. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kiriti. And it really is commendable, the work that, Masoom India is doing on the ground, and the way that you have mentioned how difficult it is to collect evidence. And for example, it is the responsibility, and I mean, it's a definite responsibility of the state to prosecute criminal offenses. It's the state's responsibility to collect evidence. I mean, that is the role of the state. But where there are gaps in effective access to justice for serious crimes such as death in custody, this burden is disproportionately falling on human rights activists and human rights defenders and human rights organizations to do somewhat that policing function, the investigation function, the fact-finding function, and bring these cases. And it must be tremendously difficult to do that. And I think that you already highlighted a little bit, Kiriti, you touched upon a question that one of our colleagues has asked in the group, which relates to the pressures that are there for victims' families when they make a complaint in cases of death in custody. And so her question was really, how many times or how often is it the case that victims are in death in custody, unfortunately not there anymore, but the families of those that have died in death in custody, how often are they either threatened to withdraw their complaints at different stages, and how often are they lured by other means, whether it is by compensation, whether it is by some form of a settlement, to let go of their cases. And that's a question for both of our panelists, both what is the situation in Nepal and what is the situation in India with regards to the pressures that families feel. And so I know that Kiriti has already highlighted upon that. I mean, one obvious thing that he said, which was extremely alarming, is that people are killed, witnesses are killed. There is no protection mechanisms in place. That's a gap in the legal space. But still, I will pass it on to you, Kiriti, to answer this question. But first, let's go with Om to find out what is the situation for threats to families or other ways to lure them to withdraw their complaints in Nepal.
Thank you. In Nepal, we don't have a victim protection mechanism. We don't have that law also. So it's victims are always from the most of the victims are from the marginalized communities like Dalits and ethnic minorities and religious minorities. So their economic and many other situation is very bad, and there is no protection mechanism from the state. So it's in most of the cases they are threatened, they are bribed, or they are given some something to withdraw the case or to not to file the FIR. And next challenge we have seen now is that the local political leaders, local level political leaders, because they are leaders, and they know everything about the victims' family members and about the community. So in such cases, administration or police officers, they are using them. And they want some favor from the police also, because whenever they are in trouble, then the police will protect them. That is why the local level political leaders are used, and in many cases they are like mediators, to withdraw the case or to take some money and not to file the FIR, or they change their statement sometime. So this is very dangerous because they are local people, local leaders. They are powerful, locally powerful. That is why even the human rights activists, lawyers, victims' family members, they don't. It's difficult for them because they are they have their strength of the power in local area, and they can they can, threaten to the victims indirectly. And in some cases, like they have discussed with the perpetrator, and they have discussed with the local authorities also, and victim family members get some money, some compensation from there, and they are there to share the compensation. They said that, yeah, I have worked for you, and I have talked to them, and you have got this much money, and you need to give us that money, some part of that money. Such kind of situation is there. That's why the victims, do not have that courage. They do not have that strength, because they don't have protection mechanism. Even if we, as human rights lawyers, we visit to them, but we won't be there always, to protect them or to encourage them. And when we are there with them, and then they are encouraged, and they say that, yes, we need to file the case for justice. But later on, they change their version, and they don't want to go for legal proceedings. So that kind of situation is happening, and it's very dangerous for for the system also, because the powerful perpetrators can buy the victims by using their money. So it's dangerous. It is just changing the systems also in the file. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, that is extremely dangerous, and I think that we have identified this to be a consistent problem in several jurisdictions in Asia, but definitely out of this conversation, the need for very effective witness protection mechanisms is essential to complaints in such cases. In both India and Nepal, given the context that you have highlighted and Kirti has highlighted. And I just want to add here, and Kirti already touched upon this, is that the threats are not just for families and complainants, that are part of the family, but they're also for human rights organizations, even if they manifest in different ways. Like Kirti mentioned, there's a number of legal proceedings against Masoom for the work that they do. But I also imagine that there might be some situations where lawyers are also under threat, or other actors of the state which are trying to prosecute or trying to investigate such type of cases without being sufficiently empowered or without being sufficiently protected through some protection framework in the law. So please feel free to also, Kirti, touch upon that. But I will just, hand it over to you now for your comments here.
Okay. As Om narrated his experience, I agree, and you, Fatima, also told rightly that though there are very few lawyers, not all, very few, but they are also under threat. Somehow or many ways there are that advocates also, lawyers, who are presenting the case, they are also under threat. We have also good Hindi pictures, Bollywood pictures on this issue. I want to share in this point our own tactics. Number one, we cannot get any foreign fund, but we are getting UNVFBT support. And there are one specific year that support to the social support to the victims. And by this way, we have formed one mass organization called Victims' Voice. And only the victims are the members in this group. And wherever some victims are in danger, under threat, or witness under threat, we took him or her in different place, different district, different police station. in our office, still we have some spaces for the victims, beds, other things, for food, something. We have organized this. So we are taking them, and there, affidavits. There are affidavits in India through judicial magistrate, executive magistrate, and notary public. And we get their statement affidavit. And so if afterwards he or she can face any dire consequence or something, we got their statements which we are providing to the judges and the Human Rights Commission, meta legal body. It is number one. Number two, we have developed some, through your mobile, you can record the statement of the victims. So we can record this statement visually, what you call audio or video. We can record this and keep it and send it to proper authorities on record. Number three, the yes, it is the point I want to say, nothing more.
Thank you so much, Kiriti. This is very insightful and all very important, the work that you're doing on the ground. But I think I would just reiterate that, this protecting victims and witnesses, and protecting, everybody's right to be able to complain against these very serious violations in safety, is the state's responsibility. And of course, because of these gaps in the state protection mechanism, organizations such as yours is really doing a lot to fill in that gap. But, it has to be reiterated that it should be the state's function to ensure that witness protection mechanisms are there and that they are enforced, and that there are, penalties, not just for those that are responsible for the original violation, but for any institution which is contributing to a state of insecurity for anyone who wants to complain or report these type of cases. And I think I just want to bring back now one particular point that was extremely important that Kiriti raised, that in every society, of course, death in custody is quite rampant, quite pervasive, and the gaps in the criminal justice are affecting everyone at large, to an extent. But the most marginalized groups in any given society, like Kiriti mentioned, that it's the lower castes, as they are referred to in India, or the religious minorities, such as Muslims in India, that are most vulnerable to these kind of abuses. I'm sure, Om, you might have some thoughts on, particular minorities, or other groups that are marginalized, even if they are not minorities, such as women, for example, that are at an increased risk to forms of violence. But so I wonder if both of you wanted to take this time that we have to speak a little bit more about the particular experiences or the particular situations of death in custody or related risks for these marginalized groups or these religious minorities or specific segments of society that you are both working with in India and Nepal. So over to you, Om, and then we move to Kiriti.
Thank you. In Nepal, in our experience, Advocacy Forum's experience that we have been documenting the cases, we find that most of the victims are from marginalized community. That means from the Dalit community and from the Tarai region, Tarai origin communities and ethnic minorities. So most of the, in our record also, in our data also, it shows that most of torture victims are from these communities. and most of the custodial death cases happen. So most of them were from these communities. So it's that how the state authorities are treating to some factions of minorities or some geographical groups. You know. So they are, because they are mostly arrested. Sometimes they are, ill-treated outside the custody also. They are sometimes, illegally detained also and released. Like Kirtida said that there is no record of police. They are, and next thing is these communities, who are illiterate, the economically poor and illiterate, and these communities, are easy victims, easy targets, because these communities, are safe for those perpetrators because they can't raise their voices, against them. So because of that might be, and the state authorities, other institutions, that needs to, monitor, who are in monitoring, capacity. They need to monitor the detention centers, prisons, child correction homes. They are also not, doing their duties properly because they are already informed that, they are visiting to this detention center on this date at this time. Then most of the, they find everything is okay. No, in our last meeting with attorneys and chief attorneys, they said that when they visited to police custody, they said that everything is okay. Everything is okay, everything is fine. But when they visited to prisons, then there are a lot of complaints. That means why the people or detainees, say that everything is fine, everything is okay, but not the prisoners, because in detention they don't have that security. They fear the security. That is because the police officers are, there around there, and they can be tortured any time. That kind of fear is there. So security is more challenging, that for the detainees, for the prisoners, for the human rights activists, for the human rights lawyers also. So in overall, just I want to say that there is need for victim protection mechanism and need for human rights defenders protection mechanism in Nepal. And as Kirtida mentioned, that there is a need for awareness raising among the community also, because in some communities that they say that it's normal to get some slaps or kicks or some beatings from the police if they do something wrong, or even the victims themselves, they do not know that they have their own right against torture, right against illegal detention, right against ill treatment. It's a separate part from what they did, or they might have committed some crime, but they need to have that respect. But they are not aware about it. So sometimes when we meet detainees, then they say that yes, I did this mistake or I did this crime. That is why it's okay that I'm tortured or I'm ill-treated or I'm illegally detained. It's okay. But they don't know that there is court to give them punishment. Not the police. Police role is just to collect evidences, collect witnesses, and support the case, and file case, with the support of the report to the public prosecutor's office. So then it's a court that gives punishment if he or she has committed crime. So that kind of awareness is very important in Nepal's case also, because they don't know their rights. And for this, if there is protection mechanism for the victims, and if there is protection mechanism for the human rights defenders, then a lot of things can be done for prevention of torture in Nepal. And next thing is the legal barriers, that is causing a lot of harms, to file cases against the perpetrators. So that must be changed. And these mechanisms, which have different roles, they need to do their works properly. Sometimes I think, I feel that there is a lot of needs for awareness raising or sensitization among the stakeholders, because the doctors do not know how to document medical legal documentation, and the prosecutors are not that much sensitive sometimes, and then judges are also, even we have found in many cases they are not sensitized on some particular issues. So and public prosecutor's office, they are not aware on many cases or many issues, maybe, or they might have that information, or they might have that knowledge, but they do not practice it. Most of them are like doing what their seniors did, in many years back. So they do not want change. And next thing is that the recommendations of these monitoring bodies are not implemented. Even the Human Rights Commission's recommendations are not properly implemented. So so that is the challenge. So there is need for public awareness, need for sensitization to the stakeholders of criminal justice system, and need for protection of the victims and the human rights defenders. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Om. You also brought us closer, with your conversations, and to talking about recommendations and what are the next steps. And you've mentioned a number of key recommendations that are essential if we are to strengthen this access to justice framework in the context of death in custody cases. And Kiriti also had some recommendations earlier in his conversation about what regional entities, what human rights organizations, international ones as well, can do to support, dismantling this impunity that we see in the local context. So I think I will just like to say one thing, which was very interesting that both of you raised, which was about this culture of violence that is deeply ingrained within our societies. And not just in the criminal justice institutions and their actors, but also in the society at large, which has this perception that if you have done a crime, may it be a petty crime, or it be, stealing something, that you deserve punishment at once, starting from, the community members that caught you stealing, to the police that takes you into custody. So it seems like that at every tier, there is this understanding that, punishment has begun. And that reflects in the way that, a particular perpetrator of any crime or alleged crime is dealt with before there has been a final conviction, or before there has been a final assessment of their guilt. And that culture of violence, I think, is something that I would really like, Kiriti, to also talk about, that what is this in our societies? And when we talk about recommendations, no matter what legal and policy changes we make, we also have to simultaneously think about how do we address this violence that's pervasive as well, and very well deep-rooted into the communities. And Kiriti gave examples of Bollywood films, but I know that there is also a glorification of police and state officials, doing things that the law cannot achieve, and quick dispensation of justice that is glorified in some of the movies as well, where the lead actor is a police officer, but he manages to work within the system, to bring to justice, sometimes completely illegally from our standpoint. So also the celebration of some of these acts in our societies, but also the deep-rooted acceptance of violence in our societies. I think I would also really like, Kiriti, for you to touch upon that. What do you think is the reason? But then what do you think is also a solution or a recommendation here for that? And then we will also take final remarks from Om on this.
Thank you, Fatima. I want to just mention about the minorities, untouchables, etc. To me, I think that South Asia, not South Asia, total Asian countries, their governments are in problem because our governments thinking about representing and empowering only the religious majorities. Minorities are being ignored. It is main problem. So everywhere, minorities, they are being targeted by all means. Not only by police, it is by the government machinery and other things. About 10 years ago, made once a very good survey, and they come out with findings that jail population are being fed, treated. It is total loss of waste of public exchequer, because ultimately 68% jail populace, they are being acquitted by the court. So either these arrests are unnecessary, or the police and prosecution cannot prove their guilt before the court. So there are some problems. And they come out with also this, that 98% populace, they are from religious minority, untouchables, and not tribals. It is second way. Third point, to me, in India and also in other countries, the police who are taking arrest of someone, they are the investigating agency. It is our opinion that investigating agency should be separated from the police. In one documentation, we have found that in Indian police, they are getting only 12% time of our total duty to investigate one crime. That means 88% of his duty is being involved in either law and order or VIP management. For investigation, they have only 12% time. That means they want very shortcut. Usko maro, beat him, torture him, confess him. Though our Indian criminal procedure code strictly said that statement of witness, statement of accused cannot be granted in the court whether he confessed or not. 161 CRPC, there is there. But still it is going on. And they are trying to establish some writing some charge sheet. By this way, they are stopping their investigation reports. So my conclusion that after arrest, first 24 hours is very crucial in the detention center, in the police station. We have to build up some mechanism, sending some lawyers or what you call legal volunteers, paralegal volunteers to the police station and see what is going on. Number one. Number two, fight for this, what you call CCTV camera or something that in the lockup. And that should be strictly monitored by the local judicial magistrate every week. Number three, if it is possible, the human rights group, they should be allowed to visit detention centers, prison and police station. I think, in short, I finished my way. Thank you.
Thank you, Kiriti. But Kiriti, I would like to push you a little bit because
Yes.
you talked about this earlier, is that, just about the violence that is deeply ingrained in society. And I know that India is facing a lot of issues, but we're talking in the criminal justice context. But I really also want your opinion on, this acceptance of violence in society that
Yes.
then is reflected in, the particular ill treatment towards religious minorities and other marginalized groups that you mentioned. But also the same violence is then also accepted when it's done by state authorities, by the larger community in some way. And that also, in a way, empowers states to get away with what they do. So I wanted some of your final remarks on that as well. That how do we address or how do we look at this situation of this deeply ingrained violence within our societies at a larger level?
It is, these things are happening in India, and again saying that in all over countries, these things are going on. In India, Dalits can be raped, Dalits can be killed when they are taking drinking water from the village well. Yes, he can get. He cannot walk in the street before a Pandit or Brahmin or something, upper caste. So this system is still going on. Muslims cannot take beef, and just on suspicion that he is taking beef, one person has been killed and no one has been arrested till date. For 5 years I have done. So it is failure of rule of law. It is failure of government. It is failure of quote unquote holy democracy. It is failure of our parliament. So we have to raise this issue that what is going on. Something is written in our constitution, but other things are going on rampantly, and this is so we have to raise this issue to in front of civil society, that these things are going on. And civil society, I do not think that our civil society, I am talking about civil society all over the world. And we have to raise this issue. How we can raise this issue? We are trying our best. But it is the duty and task should be taken by some regional and universal human rights groups to take this issue and take these voices and before the floor. So I want this, we are trying, because the Indian media, it is two-part. 60 to 80% gone to in favor of government. They do not publish anything against the government. And 20% or 30% rest, they are only taking up the issues which favors in for their political party. They are also same culprit. So there is no independent media in our country. And day to day, it is problem facing by other countries also. So what is going on in the field, in the villages, remote villages, we have to raise this issue because now, due to this internet, a world became very short. So we have to raise this issue internationally. And I strongly believe there are so many people are there to take up this issue as their mandate. And it is the duty of regional and worldwide human rights group like A3T or something, they can take up this issue. It is my earnest request, or in my opinion. Thank you, Fatima.
Thank you so much, Kirti. Thank you so much. And I think we are, of course, collecting these recommendations as A3T, that what we can do to support each country in the region, but also what can we do together to ensure that the region is going in a better place than the way it seems, unfortunately. Om, your closing remarks now, please.
We have problems in around the world that these things are happening because law says something, but in practice something is happening. That means something is mistake. So something is missing or something is going wrong. So for it, that activism, more activism, and awareness among the civil society organizations and the national and international pressures. These things are very important because it's sometimes we can say globalization, globalization. So something happens in local area, in the remote area, but it must be globalized. If it's globally, globally known, then then a kind of pressure would be there on the government for changes. So we need to work more, and we need to become more resilient, and we need to empower to the victims community, and we need to have a lot of more people to work on this, whether it's a lot of volunteers maybe or interns maybe. So that kind of awareness and activism is very important. And consortium networks, these are very important because these things are there. The powerful perpetrators or powerful, state and state agents are there. So we need to have a powerful collaboration to fight against it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Om. This discussion has been very insightful, and I'm grateful to both Kirti and Om and their organizations for the work that they're doing in such a difficult space, but also for this conversation that we've had today. Thank you to all the participants that have stayed with us. We've been having back-to-back marathons, so marathon of webinars. So we're grateful for these conversations that are extremely important. I will just hand it over now to the Secretariat to for any closing remarks here. And thank you once again. You're on mute, unfortunately.
Oh, so sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, so I have spotlight again my video. Back to and Kirti and Fatima. Thank you so much for filling into today's webinar. We have spot here a lot of new information regarding torture and also death in custody in all sorts of levels within the society. So I really hope that today's discussion will bring more value, knowledge to all participants here that are hearing live. from Contrast's YouTube channel. And we still have 4 more webinars after tonight. So please join for the rest of 4-hour webinars, and we'll see you again tomorrow until 28th of June. Thank you, thank you, Fatima, and thank you, Kiriti, and have a good night. Have a pleasant evening from Jakarta. Goodbye.